The Senate passes its state budget bill. The House revisits the Racial Justice Act. And fracking gets the fast track in the House of Representatives. The story's next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. Thank you so much for watching this week. We'll begin our show in the Senate, where negotiations should begin soon on a final state budget bill. A few weeks ago, we reported the House had passed its budget. Well, the Senate unveiled a different set of priorities that set the week's budget debate. The full Senate approved a $20 billion budget plan this week that contains no new taxes, no tax increases, and caps the state's gasoline tax.
But one of the choices you make is are you going to increase revenue somehow? And the question is, do you want to raise taxes? Well, this budget makes a choice with reference to that, and the choice is that the private sector in North Carolina is taxed enough.
The Senate budget would give non-teacher state workers a 1.2% pay increase, with retirees getting a cost of living adjustment. The House, by comparison, proposes a one-time $250 bonus and bonus vacation time for all state workers. North Carolina public schools will be losing $227 million because federal stimulus money expires. The House budget would replace that entire $227 million with state money. But the Senate counters with $84 million and gives school systems some options on how to spend it. It can keep teachers whose jobs otherwise expire or pay state-funded teachers a pay raise. Senate Democrats take aim at that provision.
You're serving up the teachers' deserved pay increase. They deserve it just as much as state employees and the other people that the state pays, and these are state-paid people, and you're serving up their money to fill the hole that you refuse to fill for the public schools.
You work for any other outfit in this world, and you'll pay the ones that are producing, and you'll pay them well. And the rest of them you'll either get rid of or they will not get the increases.
Democratic Minority Whip Josh Stein joins us from the North Carolina Senate. Thanks for being on.
Pleasure.
Okay, we got a balanced budget. We have no new taxes, some restoration of budget cuts to education. Silver linings or not?
There are no silver linings in this budget. Last year's budget cut about 6,400 positions out of K-12 education, 3,000 of whom were teachers or teacher assistants. This year's budget will result in another 5,400 in additional job losses in K-12, 2,000 of whom are teachers. This is simply the wrong priorities for North Carolina.
I've heard more than one political analyst and reporters say it depends on how you run the numbers you get out the end of this budget process.
And there are different ways to count it. So what I have done is gone to the Department of Public Instruction, and it is purely on a net basis. How many instructional personnel were there last year? How many instructional personnel are there this year? So I'm talking about lost positions. Some of those were teachers who were fired. Some of them, the positions were unfilled when they became vacant because people retired. What I care about is that our children are not, as our school population increases, we are reducing the number of school personnel teaching our children in K-12 in a world that is exceptionally competitive, where we need to have every person we can working as hard as we can to educate our children. And it's a matter of what choices did they make. They have chosen to pass tax cuts for millionaires, people who have doctors, lawyers. Hey, look, everyone in my law firm gets this tax cut. They didn't ask for the tax cut, and frankly, I'm willing to wager a lot of people don't even know they got it. That was $360 million. That money could have gone to help teachers.
That $84 million, that offsets $227 million in federal stimulus money that pays teachers' salaries. There's an option there in the Senate budget. Give your existing teachers, state-funded ones, a pay raise, or keep some of these federally funded teachers. What's the right call there if that has to be the reality?
It doesn't have to be the reality. It is the reality that the Republicans are putting on local local school systems. To say you either have to give a teacher who has not had a raise in 4 years, you either give the teacher a raise or you're going to have to lay people off. That's a false choice when we have a choice between giving tax cuts to millionaires or funding our public education.
What would local schools choose if given that option?
I think different schools will choose differently. The budget gives a pay raise to state employees, much deserved. There is no pay raise for teachers. Teachers perform perhaps the most important state service we provide, that is educating our children. This budget is replete with the wrong priorities.
Yeah, and that's made the headlines, that $84 million. But looking back when the federal stimulus money, that EduJobs is what it's called, came online, were schools right to look at that and hire teachers and expect those jobs to be permanent, or was stimulus money to stimulate and then go away when things theoretically got better with our economy?
And our hope is that things will get better with our economy, and we have seen an uptick. We need it to get stronger. I think that the schools made absolutely the right choice because that was 3 years worth of educating our kids. And for the Republicans to have put it on school systems to say it's now on you to lay those teachers off, that's the wrong choice.
In the process, it's never been exactly wide open when you write a budget and you're the majority party and you're in the minority position. But anything in this budget reflect Democratic priorities?
I think that they did an adequate job in filling some of the Medicaid gap that persists every year. You're never going to get that number exactly right when you do a 2-year estimate. So that would be an area I could point to.
Very quickly, it's only $11 million in the House budget, but it's zero in the Senate. Eugenics compensation or reparations. A lot of enthusiasm over on the House side, and the Republicans, I hear, had a debate on it in caucus, and they don't have the support to pass this. What about eugenics?
It absolutely should happen. This isn't some mythical, theoretical, historical event. This is something that the state did to people who are alive, and the state needs to compensate those people. There is a $6.5 million pork barrel piece of wasteful government spending that was tucked away. It wasn't even in the budget. It was hidden in the report to buy land in Randolph County that doesn't have to do with any particular business, any particular economic opportunity. It's just pork barrel buying a land purchase. That money could have been much better used, whether it was for eugenics or for our school kids.
Senator Josh Stein, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The Senate budget fully funds Senator Phil Berger's Excellent Schools Act. That's a reform bill that would require students to read at grade level by 3rd grade or be held back. Teachers would be accountable and possibly fired for inferior classroom performance. The House budget ignores the Berger plan, but the Department of Public Instruction takes notice. State Superintendent June Atkinson testified this week that the Senate should delay school reform until 2013.
We have learned many lessons, and we know that in some cases what may sound good will not reap the adequate results. So I respectfully request that you wait until the long session to consider the budget components of 795.
The Senate's community college system budget features one key difference from the House budget. The House offers a one-time $10 million grant for worker retraining, but the Senate does not include this money. More differences can be found in the UNC system budget. The Senate offers $1.3 million for university enrollment growth against no such funding in the House budget. UNC Hospital's subsidy is preserved by the Senate but eliminated in the House budget. UNC-TV, this network, would maintain its $10.5 million in state funding compared with $9 million in the House budget bill. UNC-TV is funded in part by the state budget bill. Senate Republican leaders say their Health and Human Services budget looks to end the annual challenge of Medicaid funding shortfalls. The Senate would give Medicaid a $168 million increase, among other funding increases, to handle increased patient load.
We are providing a net increase of $230 million to the Medicaid budget this year. That's going to be a key adjustment. And as Senator Stevens mentioned, we have $100 million that we have added to our reserves to backfill Medicaid.
With House and Senate leaders now offering competing budgets, the next step is negotiating a compromise spending plan that faces a straight up or down vote. Senator Neil Hunt of Wake County co-wrote, helped write this Senate budget bill. Thanks for being on the show, sir.
Happy to do it.
All right, what I'm seeing on this budget and what I'm reading, $125 million, you spend less than the House. Was the House free spending, or were projections different from what you saw from what the House sees as revenue?
Actually, the main difference is how you spend the money. The Senate was much more conservative on Medicaid. Basically, our philosophy was if we're going to have savings in things like CCNC, we kind of like to see them before we budget them. And the House took the approach that we think we can do this, so we're going to budget it that way. And that was about a $230 million difference right there. The other big difference was EduJobs. The House wanted to fund about approximately $400 million worth of EduJobs, federal money. That's one-time.
EduJobs is federal money that pays teacher salaries, some teacher salaries in North Carolina.
Some teacher salaries.
Okay.
It also can be used for other educational expenses.
Okay.
But it's federal money. It's one-time money that ended last year. And, our philosophy has been to not use non-recurring money to fund recurring expenses. And that's what this is. So when the House funds this shortfall created by the EduJobs lack of funding, it becomes that. It becomes funding, recurring money with non-recurring expenses.
Now, the House, they noticed the $227 million in federal money is leaving. They found $227 million in state funding. They plugged that perceived hole. Your leaders in the Senate and yourself have argued this point that the schools should have known this was temporary money and shouldn't have hired permanent jobs against it. Democrats don't agree with you on that, but why is that right in your opinion?
Well, I don't think that's a major point, but some LEAs did use, they were aware the money was going to end, so they did count on it and did not use the money to hire additional teachers for recurring expenses. They should, and some counties did a very good job of anticipating that. And so, do you reward the guys that didn't do it right? So that was not the rationale for our budget, though. The Exceptional Schools Act that Senator Berger presented, $47 million. We really like that change in philosophy. We think that just throwing money at the same old system is not the way to go. We think that it's really important that if someone is a third grade student, that they be able to read before they go to the fourth grade. That's just one of the things we did. We think it's critical to get the best teachers in front of the classroom. And these are provisions that were in that particular bill that we like, as opposed to just throwing money in. And we actually are spending more money than we did previously, of course.
You're putting about the $46 million to fund Senator Berger's Schools Act. But you need a separate bill to implement the policy, or will the budget implement the policy if the money stays in the budget?
Well, either way, actually, we passed the bill in the Senate, and I don't know what the House has done with it. They may have talked about it today. I'm not sure.
Why do you think the House is lukewarm on that bill, or even cool to it right now?
Well, obviously they like their way of doing it, or they wouldn't have done it that way. They wanted to go ahead and fund the EduJob shortfall, and we thought we should take a different approach and just try to implement a system that would really help education as opposed to just throwing money at it.
I want to ask you about the eugenics compensation or reparations bill. The House and its Republican leaders have pushed hard on this bill, and what I understand, your caucus in the Senate has some closed-door discussions amongst yourselves, and you didn't reach a consensus to have a majority vote on that. What's with the eugenics compensation bill and in the budget and as a policy?
Well, there are lots of good things that we should be doing, that we ought to be doing, and we would like to be doing. And frankly, that fits in that category. This is a very tight budget year, not as tight as last year when we came in and had that, $2.5 billion shortfall, because the previous administration was using non-recurring money to fund recurring expenses. So when we came in last year, we had a $2.5 billion shortfall. That was something huge we had to get over. This year is not that bad, but it's still bad. We still don't have any money. There are lots of good things we could be doing, like the smoking cessation program, eugenics, lots of things like that just aren't the money to do it. Where are you going to get the money from? You're going to get it from education. You get it from Medicaid. Medicaid is a federal mandate. You've got to fund it. Transportation. There are just lots of pressing needs, and we just had to put the money where we thought was best.
Senator Hunt, appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. Glad to see you.
Some House Democratic legislator absences led to a veto-proof majority and a veto override Thursday afternoon. It was House Bill 7. It would allow community colleges to opt out of the William Ford Direct Federal Loan Program. Supporters of the opt-out bill say the federal loan program carries too many strings for community colleges and leads to student over-borrowing. House Democrats say low-income students will be cut off from affordable college loans. The bill is back in the Senate. The House votes to create a database that would track children's progress through school and into their early working careers. Supporters say children would be assigned a non-identifying number. State agencies and institutions could privately share this data until the student has been in the workforce 5 years.
And it'll allow us to move forward in a more timely manner with getting information to help us make data-driven, evidence-based decisions, which is what we hear talked about around the General Assembly very often.
We kept on hearing in Education Reform Study Committee that there was a need for this data and a need for that data and a need for a way to link the two up. Well, folks, here it is.
The bill would hold state agencies harmless for accidentally releasing identifiable information from this proposed database. The Racial Justice Act allows North Carolina's condemned inmates to have their sentences reduced to life without parole by proving racial bias played a role in sentencing. An earlier attempt to repeal the act earned a gubernatorial veto. Well, this spring, a judge ruled that juries statewide have exercised racial bias in capital trials. That led conservatives to renew their effort to change the Racial Justice Act, claiming this is about a moratorium on the death penalty, not about race and not about justice. House Republicans believe it is time that North Carolina begin lifting the policies they say have led to a de facto moratorium on executions. The Racial Justice Act was targeted this week. Conservatives blamed it for bolstering the moratorium and adding years to the justice process.
It took 45 judges, an average of 8 to 15 years, before someone could conceivably be executed for first-degree murder. With the advent of the Racial Justice Act, it now appears that it'll be 53 judges and 14 to 20 years.
Republicans say their version of Senate Bill 416 takes the governor and council of state approval out of the process of creating execution protocol. Judges would not be allowed to declare a trial as a non-capital trial because prosecutors miss a deadline to declare they want to seek capital punishment. Inmates claiming racial bias in their capital sentences would be required to accept life without parole as a condition of seeking an end to their death penalty sentence.
Errors made in death penalty cases can't be corrected once the sentence is carried out. Ladies and gentlemen, the Racial Justice Act is needed because we know that there is racial discrimination, and it's been proven by data.
Here's how the process works. Defendants would have the burden of proving racial bias played a role in them receiving capital punishment. The bill would let them investigate racially biased conduct within the prosecutorial district or the county where they received their death sentence. The fact-finding could work under a tight time frame, that being 10 years before the crime occurred until 2 years after the defendant was sentenced to death. Bias could be investigated in the jury selection process or on the defendant's race. The bill would forbid using statistical data as the sole basis of an inmate's argument that they were subject to discrimination.
The statistics show the court hearing was held, the discrimination is latent, pervasive throughout the jury systems in North Carolina, whether by county, whether statewide, whether by prosecutorial district. The studies were done.
And we say, oh, you know, we've got to go through all these statistics and everything. This is about monsters. Monsters, evil people doing unspeakable, inhuman acts.
Condemned inmates using the Racial Justice Act would receive a pretrial hearing to offer their evidence of racial bias. It's a judge, not a jury, that would decide the legitimacy of the bias claim. It's also a judge that would decide if a death sentence should be vacated in favor of a life sentence with no chance of parole. The Senate passed that House bill defining how sea level research is conducted by North Carolina coastal resources agencies. The Coastal Resources Commission would receive exclusive right to define sea level rise rates. Historic sea level data could be used, but any scenarios showing dramatic rise could not be used unless statistically significant and peer-reviewed data can back the claim. Supporters say scientists are offering theoretical scenarios that are hurting coastal development and potentially rising insurance costs. The bill needs final House approval, but leaders there have sent it to the House Environment Committee. The Senate holds House legislation changing rules for mortgages and bill collectors. Mortgage lenders would have more paperwork options for declaring a person has paid their mortgage in full. Bill collectors could face felony charges for simulating a court process when trying to collect on a debt. Filing a false lien against property owned by public employees would be a crime, as would filing false documents showing a loan has been paid when in fact it has not. House Republicans drove passage of an energy exploration bill this week. It addresses natural gas and oil drilling policymaking, and it sets the stage for a future yes or no vote on physical drilling in North Carolina. The House's version of an energy exploration bill moved quickly this week. It does match the goals of a Senate-approved energy bill, but with changes that strengthen local government influence on policy and property owners who sign natural gas exploration leases.
It's a bill that will move us another step forward to doing natural gas extraction. And everybody's concerns will be addressed and heard during that process. You'll go through a two and a half year rulemaking process. And myself and Stone and Bowles are completely satisfied with where we are in the House. The Senate is completely satisfied.
The House bill changes the makeup of a proposed mining and energy commission to lessen the influence of industry experts who would serve on it. The Senate bill would give a voting majority to industry officials, but the House proposes removing 3 industry representatives and installing 2 local government appointees and a representative of a locally traded natural gas company.
The inclusion of local government representatives, the Environmental Management Commission, Public Health Commission, is a great benefit.
While the Senate bill holds companies liable for contaminating private water wells or water supply wells, the House bill expands the liability. It would hold companies responsible for damage to any ground or surface water used for humans, gardens, or livestock. Companies causing water contamination would be forced to provide a new water supply to the affected property. Wake County Representative Greer Martin says energy exploration and these type issues deserve a hard look and a deep discussion, just at a slower pace.
The evidence that we've had right now that I think everyone agrees on the likely timetable, even if we flip the switch right now, on when any potential jobs and economic benefit might start flowing to our state, is that it would be a while. So we've got time to get the answers to the questions that we need.
The House fracking bill requires gas exploration companies to pay a 12.5% royalty to property owners whose land contains gas deposits. The same as in the Senate, but the Senate version would allow companies to deduct drilling expenses from the royalties being paid to those landowners. The House bill demands a full payment to landowners with no deductions.
I personally just felt that with the gas companies coming in, we need to respond to the landowners as much as we could back in the community. A lot of them are small landowners, and I wanted to make sure that we give them every opportunity to capture the profits that they can.
The House bill contains new protections for landowners and banks. Gas leases would need lender approval of any lease if the property owner still holds a mortgage. It also outlines a 3-day cooling-off period where a signed gas drilling lease can be rescinded.
I understand their concerns about the cooling off period. The Attorney General recommended 30 days. I appreciate Representative Gillespie getting us 3. I just don't think we need to rush into this. We have time and time to get it right. No state's done it right yet.
State lawmakers themselves will have time to read the results of studies of energy exploration policy. That's because the General Assembly will be required to vote on a separate bill that will allow the drilling to begin in North Carolina. That vote, should it ever come, would be at least 2 years away. The House Judiciary Committee endorses a bill that could lead to felony convictions being removed from longtime peaceful citizens' records. Representative Leo Daughtry's bill would let citizens with nonviolent felonies or misdemeanors clear their names by meeting a few conditions. First, someone must vouch for their character, and the person cannot have any other felony or misdemeanor convictions for the past 15 years. Convictions for dealing meth, heroin, or cocaine could not be removed from one's record.
If you want to know what it really is, it's trying to forgive people for a wrong that was done a long time ago. And there is some risk, there's no question about it. They may revert back to their old ways or they may not. And then we think this is a good bill because of the safeguards to prevent that.
A person's traffic violations would not affect the request for a clean criminal record. Conservatives have expressed some reservations about expungement. The House and Senate vote overwhelmingly to encourage food stamp recipients to buy local fresh food. There is some hope in this that a new policy will increase the use of electronic benefits cards at both farmers markets and at co-ops. Nutrition education will be expanded for food benefits recipients, including telling them where their local markets are operating. The Department of Health and Human Services would begin working immediately on the program and would issue a progress report to lawmakers by 2013. This weekend, when you're online, visit us on Facebook. The address is facebook.com/legweek. You can follow us on Twitter as well. Just look for @NCNLegweek. You can also find us on YouTube and at our website, unctv.org/legweek. As always, we appreciate you watching. We hope to see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.